Greetings comic lovers, and welcome back to Casually Comics, the channel where we chat all things comics, from reviews of comics new and old, to history, to anecdotes, to really wherever our whims take us. And today, late as all get up, we are covering the finale of Gwenpool Strikes Back, issue 5. And we are not late because at the time of this recording it was recently the holiday Christmas season. No, we are late because this comic filled me with feelings. It took me time to cohesively articulate them so they weren't just an incoherent Klingon death yell. I still feel that death yell though, in my soul. Let's get to it because there's a lot to talk about. But of course, if you haven't already, please do subscribe. You don't want to miss a step on this channel's zany, occasionally ranty journey. Of course, for those who missed anything, I will as always be doing a recap, even though this comic is about to state that nothing that came before mattered. But we will get to that. There is actually a speech bubble that will encompass all of this. A real speech bubble. But before that, the cliff notes. So Gwenpool has been fighting for the right to continue existing, even though she does exist and no one said otherwise, except potentially maybe some higher ups. But given how much the character has been pushed, that is not likely, and it is extra not likely when you see how this concludes. So she discovered that she has a new meta ability to retcon literally anything. And that's literally all you need to know. She used it for 2 issues that had nothing to do with anything. 1, she discovered the ability. 2, she hung out with Deadpool and complained about people who ship her, and the fact that she is drawn attractively on covers, and that boosts her sales, as does her being bad, even though neither are necessarily true and were actually proven false, because I checked the numbers on this specific series, because it was this series that she was talking about. She then set up a battle royale on an island where she pulled out all previous versions of herself to help her defeat the Hulk. That issue ended with it setting up that her boss fight was going to be with Kamala, Ms. Marvel. And that's where we are. Let's get started. The cover is nice. It's an actual cosplayer with the title Gwenpool Goes Home instead of Strikes Back, which appears to be an ode to her creation, since she came into being because of popularity with cosplayers, because of a Deadpool variant cover. So this is such a fun touch to see. Unfortunately, it is not the message we will receive inside. In fact, these fans in a way could potentially feel a tad rejected, although some of them may not. Again, different strokes, different folks. Still, this cover is a great shot, and what a fun opportunity for a fan to get to be on the cover of one of the characters she cosplays. It's neat, it's nice. Warm feelings. So the comic opens with yet another could a comic book character do this? And Gwen is dressed like a bee and then covers the Punisher in bees. Why? Literally no reason. We also already did this joke at the start of the last issue, so it is a retread to fill space. Then the comic attempts to explain that she's acting like this because it's what readers want. They are reinforcing her bad behavior. If she's acting this way, it's because of you. She's not bad, she's just drawn that way. You buy her when she's bad, even though you didn't. It's kind of like how you guys apparently love your teenage dumb so much that the first issue of GSB, that's Gwenpool Strikes Back, sold out at a distributor level on the first day. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here, so of course, let's get started. Unzip that luggage. Which distributor level? Sales are only tracked as they are sold to comic stores and libraries and the like. They're not tracked further down, say from comic book store to customer. So a #1 selling out to stores with as strong a cover as issue 1 had is not surprising. But really, most #1s are bought by stores. It's a #1. People are more likely to buy a #1. It's why so many comics are rebooted so quickly when they seem to be dipping, because you know you're going to get those sales back with a #1. Also, again, the cover was cool. And nothing she was doing on it was radically out of character. You just wanted to see why she was doing it. Hence, it was a good cover because it built interest. It's what a cover's for. Or is the implication with this statement that this was with customer sales? Because we can't track that. And I tried to. I looked to see if they did a second printing, because these days that doesn't happen quite as often, so when it does, they tend to write about it. And with the buzz around this book and the push and the promotion behind it, if it had, I feel like there would have been articles about it, but I could find nothing. But perhaps I just, didn't go down the right rabbit hole. If you find something, let me know. I just found lots of puff pieces about how we all need to sit up and take notice of this comic because it's gonna change everything, and take deep shots at Marvel. And if by deep shots it means make some vague, generalized statements and leave them there and move on, then yes, shots were made. Also, you guys apparently love teenage dumb shit. So is that how this writer views Gwenpool in general, or her Gwenpool? Because Gwenpool has fans, and it's not just because of teenage dumb shit. Of course her antics are part of the appeal, and even if it was the sole appeal, why is that a bad thing? Why insult a factor that allegedly made your book sell out? Citation needed. It's a bit of a dig, and it's just there. Bam! In your face. I hope you enjoyed spending your $4.99. You're just sitting here reading and potentially enjoying, and then it's like, hey you're reinforcing this character's negative behavior. So it could be read that you're the reason that this author feels that the character has problems. It's definitely possible to infer that from this statement, especially when you add in the past stuff from issue 2. I keep getting rewarded for my worst behavior. So on that note, welcome to the final issue of Gwenpool Strikes Back. See, now that true believer thing that she's been saying throughout these comics is a bit more of an insidious tone, if you inferred some of the stuff from the prior statements. It feels more like a line in the sand, like a true believer needs to like this new direction for Gwen. As someone who has enjoyed Gwen in the past, leave a like if you too love teenage dumb shit. A statement that just gets sillier and sillier the more you say it. So now it's time for that Kamala deathmatch, but not before a detour into Steve and Tony arguing. For no reason at all, except to fill pages and put a throwaway joke. Here we have Steve calling Tony a warmongerer and Tony calling Steve a Depression-era Luddite. And then she puts them together in a get-along shirt. So what is this? I mean, aside from filler, it's a shipping joke about Stoney, the pairing of Steve and Tony, but it has a very MCU-based slant of the characters, as can be seen by the tone of the argument, because movie Tony and Steve had a very different relationship than comic book Steve and Tony. MCU Steve and Tony are barely friends. They are friends because the movie told you they are, but they rarely demonstrate, instead bickering like this panel. However, in the comics, up until Civil War in 2006, they were best friends, firm friends. In fact, it was the destruction of this friendship in what many felt was a contrived manner that led to the rise of the ship. It arose as a fix-it, as fans tried to find a way to get these two back together, largely through fan fiction, and that kind of evolved into a ship. Fan fiction is such an amazing fan activity, and those fans are every bit as much fans as other fans, and people need to stop trying to pedestal the fandom, especially when outsiders are already doing that for us. Fans should stick together. That's my 2 cents. Since then, attempts have been made to either repair the friendship or, pretend Civil War didn't happen. Just like how we pretend Cap isn't ripped from an alternate timeline to cover up the Hydra Cap stuff. Or how Tony is a rebuild of the original Tony because Captain Marvel Carol Danvers murdered him in Civil War 2. Even though they did acknowledge that recently. But right, aren't we waiting for a boss fight? Kamala Khan, big hands, go! And it doesn't happen. Instead, they talk about how Kamala has noticed that Gwen is not okay. Yeah, I mean, the wackiness, the antics, it's gotten a lot worse. And to someone who knows you, someone who's seen the antics in the past, you just seem manic. Can you just stop looking at me like that? You're making this harder. I just want to help. Then fight me. What a profound moment that came out of absolutely nowhere, so I cannot attach to it. You know what could have been used to really firmly establish that she wasn't okay and that this wasn't just a new take? The last 4 issues. Remember, not everybody coming into this will have an extensive history with Gwenpool. So having a character comment on it is a good idea. Having them bring it up for the first time in issue 5 on page 8, not so much. Kamala then says she wouldn't fight her because it would be punching down. Punching down is the idea that there are certain people you shouldn't fight with because they are at a disadvantage from you in some kind of privileged hierarchical structure. However, it is usually twisted to more insidious means. It is often used as a way for people to justify some very egregious insults towards certain groups, or as a shield to prevent oneself from being insulted. You know, you wouldn't hit a gal with glasses, would ya? It also often falls apart upon examination, since power dynamics, contrary to popular belief, are not static. They are not only always changing, but change from region to region, situation to situation, and person to person. In short, they are fluid. Not that the idea of kicking a person when they're down isn't a thing, because it most definitely is, but these are different concepts. But let us accept the punching down concept for a moment. How would it be punching down for Kamala to fight Gwen, who has power to retcon literally anything and could just will her out of existence with a thought? Gwen is essentially a Q at this point. The stronger argument that is hinted at, but waylaid for this one, is because they are friends. And she's worried about her, and that's a way better, more humanizing reason that also matches with the tones and panel of the last scene where it actually got pretty emotional than the punching down argument. I won't punch down is also low-key insulting? I don't know, when I come to fight, I come to fight. I will see you in the parking lot after school, or after work. Then Kamala acknowledges that Gwen has superpowers, or at least appears to her, something that hasn't really been acknowledged by many characters up to this point. And then she tells her, or you're conspiring with bad guys, but I know you're not into that. That's right, that's just the reader rewarding her for bad behavior. And apparently that's bad, you should feel bad. God, it means so much to hear you say that. It is retcon time, we're gearing up. It's a doozy. Jean was in a cocoon the whole time, can sit down. Hal was parallaxed the whole time, so nothing counts, can sit down. You are not even ready. I'm just not from here. I'm from a world where you guys are all comic book characters. Gwen, I'm not a comic book character, I'm a person. Right, I'm a person from a world where you are comic books. Prove it. I can't. Well, I mean, you could just yoink her into your white space and show her all the pages of not only her own life, but everybody else's. Or if you don't want to traumatize her that badly, you could retcon something small right before her eyes so that she sees it happen, or tell her something that only a telepath with boundary issues would know. Because it's not true? No, because Doctor Strange mystically removed all my ties to the past so I could survive here. Here it comes. So I've been thinking, what if you only developed your powers semi-recently and that's why you don't know their source? Developed them? Like a mutant? Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. I mean, it makes the most sense, right? Especially if you have reality manipulation powers. It explains why you can't remember being a mutant. The shock of your powers manifesting could have kicked up something from your subconscious that changed your perception of reality, like, this is all a comic book world. You know, like your brain trying to protect itself from the newfound ability you couldn't control yet. This panel for screaming. This is me. Screaming. You and me, Gwen, baby. All the way. Okay, firstly, this is an extremely clever cop-out. But cop-out it still is, but very clever. Credit where credit is due. Let's examine this firstly. Reality warping. That is not the same thing as omniscience. Gwen knows more than she should about the Marvel Universe, or she did. Things she could not know just by being able to warp reality. You'd need to add other powers on top of that. Next, the idea that this makes her more unique or firmly cemented. While yes, Gwen is derivative of Deadpool, which is her origin, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. There are plenty of derivative characters who have stepped on their own. What made her different was this origin. This origin, while it folds in elements of the first, places her in well-trodden territory of reality warpers. There are many of those mutants already out there. So I contend that while this could seemingly make her more erase-proof, it also makes her less memorable. But we're not done. They're about to build in a back door, just in case this backfires or is poorly received down the line later on. I'm not a mutant. I know that. And I know this is how I die. But I'm just so tired. How many characters have just vanished without ceremony or fanfare? For no reason. The very fact that this comic exists is in a way proof that this was not going to happen for Gwen. That as a character, she was going to be made to happen, organically or otherwise. Well, I already feel like a ghost, so who cares? And then she's on Krakoa, where most of the mutants are thanks to House of X and Powers of X. So even though she claims that she's a fraud and that she used her own abilities to retcon her own history, really, this leaves you in an interesting position. You can now pick or choose. Is she a mutant? Yes. Is she from the real world? Yes. It's whatever you need it to be, but this is supposed to make her erase-proof. Using a lot of air quotes, it needs to stop. However, spoiler, it doesn't. Most characters who are erased or vanished had firm feet in their universes canonically. That wasn't the issue. It didn't save them, so the idea that this would, if she was ever in any real danger of vanishing, save her is a fallacy. Like there aren't many mutant characters who have faded into obscurity. What this feels like it's supposed to do is ground her for a very niche group of disparagers who are mad at the nebulousness of her origin or the fact that cosplayers were being pandered to. The idea that she was style over substance, literally. However, that was a small group. You could find far more annoyed at her derivativeness of Gwen Stacy and Deadpool, or how it never seemed that there was a cohesiveness to some of her narratives as she hopped from book to book, and that certain writers didn't seem to know how to handle her. This origin makes her Deadpool-esque costume even more baffling, which then forces the whole, okay, so she retconned herself. She's not really a mutant, but she's made herself one. Which, okay, but then she could have done that anytime. You mean to tell me that this uber comic book fan, this fangirl who's delving into the realm of shipping and the like, that she didn't have the fanfic fantasy 101 of what if I was a mutant and on the X-Men? I think she needs to hand back her fangirl card. This means, in a way, that this entire miniseries was pointless, or rather poorly plotted, because all that really mattered was page 8 of this issue onward, except for the one panel in issue 1 where she discovers that she has this ability to retcon things. So basically anything except her discovering that ability could have happened, and that's why it felt so disjointed, because all that mattered was this moment, and it never fully coalesced how to get there in a meaningful way, even though you could have built up to this in a very powerful and meaningful fashion and still had jokes along the way. This series exists to say she's a mutant, or is for all intents that matters. So to explain what this will mean for future stories where she appears as one, it is a retcon barely held together by a narrative, a stark contrast to the Sentry retcon that we just talked about last episode. Retcons have a purpose, all of them. They have an end point they need to get to, but most attempt to weld themselves to a story that can also stand on its own and has repeat value as a story. This does not, unless you really loved all those meta antics and the jokes, which potentially you did. Humor is subjective, but also she did call the reader out a lot for comic book trends that they allegedly support, but that again did not boost this book's sales, even though she said it did. I am salty. Salty Sally. Also, Quentin is here on Krakoa, and he's totally cool with the fact that she broke up with him via text. No consequences. And despite officially retconning her as being a mutant, she can still reach her white space, because of course she can. Look at all the future I have now. That we have no proof you didn't have before, nor are you actually guaranteed to have now. I had one goal in Gwenpool Strikes Back, not to get permanently erased. And I did it. We did it. Thank you for supporting me, true believers. And now, it gets insulting. Because I know some of you are gonna be like, you're reading too much into teenage dumb shit. It's just a joke. Why can't you laugh at things? Why is your heart made of stone? Let's future-proof me for whoever handles my next story. So what does that statement mean? Well, it means that this miniseries is gearing up to make itself as irrelevant as possible to future and past canon. It's making itself necessary in name only. This is why nothing actually happened except for the retcon, which also had the back door. So no matter what happens, we're not supposed to be able to come back and call out this series, ever. Future proof. So then she gets her own Powers of X style page with a description of her and her abilities and the like. I may or may not have a new mutant ability. That's not my job to figure out. It's yours now. Translation, let the fandom decide, except not actually. Because even if you were completely ambivalent about this, if your headcanon doesn't match this, it's not like they're gonna alter the stories to match what you want. Not unless they're gonna have a Jason Todd style vote. Is Gwen a mutant? Text in today. I don't know why I did this for texting. Text in. I do like this post-it. You can't control me. I will never die. It's very Gwen. Gwen then starts to talk about how the future her will be a new version. This must mean that I'm what goes in between these two versions of myself. I'm just a bridge Gwen. I didn't get to be the bright-eyed, cheerful Gwen fans fell in love with because I had work to do in this mini-series. To quote the Earl of Lemongrab, unacceptable. 1 million years. Dungeon. So what this statement says is that the author is aware that Gwen wasn't written in character the entire time, and that it was a choice. That the narrative that had been decided upon, which could have been anything because its only goal was to get to the end retcon point, pushed Gwen so outside her character boundaries that it was not possible for her to be in character, at least in the hands of this team. That's called lazy writing. And that's not to say that this author is fundamentally a bad writer, but this is not the best pairing of this writer and this character if the fact is that they could not get them in character for their purpose. It's a fumble of the baton pass, because when one takes on a character that has existed before, it is a passing of the baton. When we did issue 4, we talked about all the Gwens and how they seem different. This Gwen, as stated, is a rejection of all of those. A bridge Gwen, the only possible Gwen to tell this narrative. Allegedly. Gwen, however, is a character in a continuous continuity, and so has a form, a shape, that while moldable does have confines. And if one is going to exceed them, that needs to be accounted for narratively, and not just with an, oh, I had to do this for the plot, dialogue box. Also, there's no reason this couldn't have been done with bright-eyed fan favorite Gwen. Gwen has been sad before in past comics. She has range. That just seems more like a statement saying, I know that people don't feel she was in character, and you're right. But it was 'cause. Characters evolve, yes, and sometimes go through huge pivots, but those pivots are usually because something's either really not working or is a gimmick, like sales now please. Was Gwen really not working to that extent? And if she does just go back to exactly how she was before, then why not have had that retcon on page 1 and then made the miniseries all about her navigating this new world and these new abilities? Having Wolverine hug her on Krakoa is not exactly scintillating mutant setup. I don't know, the dedication to her meta origin within her own comic book origin was a nice nod to the fandom. I mean, again, this makes sense, and is it really any more convoluted than the Doctor Strange one? That's something fans really can decide. When it comes to past versions of a character though, they're meant to inform the character. Very strong writers can even fold in parts they don't genuinely like, not to be mocked or disparaged, i.e. Harley Gwen, by making them work, be it as counterpoints or negative traits. This bubble makes this series feel low effort. Like, well, we had to get here and I did, and if she wasn't in character, too bad, so sad. You have all these other new potential books coming, so enjoy, that's what you wanted. Also, if you liked this version, too bad, because no author has any obligation to stick to it. Future proof. This is the last time you'll see me like this, because my particular story ends here. She then cries and tells the readers that she loves them, walking off in a that's all folks style Looney Tunes bubble. But instead of that, it's got a sex joke under it. Of course, I'm gonna read you the sex joke. It says, "Was it good for you too, baby?" But with no butt drawn in, even though there would be one on anyone from that angle. But there's not, because she's 19. How dare you? Little throwback issue 2 joke there. The retcon itself is okay, and it has that back door for fans who really like the past origin, so you have your cake and eat it too. It's that kind of thing. For me, my issue stems entirely from execution. This could be a brilliant move for Gwen, although it could also potentially be a terrible X-Men get out of jail free card for the end of the Powers of X, House of X era if they really need it to be, because she's now there, and her power is she can retcon anything. She is a Deus Ex retcon. There is a visceral happiness for Gwen as a character, and that comes through. She's more real here in this issue than in any other issue, and that's largely because they married the meta with her narrative. It wasn't just there on top of it. They weren't two separate elements fighting with each other. So she has feelings and depth that have lacked in other issues, and then it's all swept away with, I was just how I had to be for this story. It was a glimpse of how this series could have played out the entire time. But instead it got sidetracked, lecturing you and showcasing zany Gwen. Now if you were concerned that Gwen was going anywhere, you could be breathing a collective sigh of relief, she's sticking around, she's not going anywhere. It may also feel like a sticking it to haters, and F you, Gwen fans aren't like other comic fans. Or maybe you just got an entirely different read on it than I did, which is also entirely possible. I can see how one could just accept this for what it presents itself as, a fun, zany romp that ensures Gwen is around for years to come, allegedly. However, well, you know how I feel. I outlined it at length in this series of videos. It's actually, sadly for me, made me less interested to see Gwen, not more. Also, it must be said, because sometimes these things get wrapped up these days, when someone does a passionate review as I have here, they assume that they're attacking the creators personally, and that is not the case at all. This is an analysis of the work, and one's skill level not only varies from work to work. You know, not everybody is a master every single time. Not everybody's bad every single time. Not everybody has the same opinions on what's good and bad, but also one's skill level doesn't equate to being a good or bad person at all. You can be talented and horrible, or a saint, or not talented and horrible or a saint. Separate things. Or you can just be a really average person. Only extremes. So what I want to hear from you is, what did you think of this series? Did you like it? A lot of you have said that you have in the comments. I read them. I hope you enjoyed joining me on this roller coaster, whether you agreed with me or not. I hope you were entertained. Are you not entertained? I'm sorry if I wasn't in character for this review, but I had work to do. I'm Sasha, and thanks so much for watching Casually Comics. Please don't forget to do all of the YouTube things. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so that you never miss a vid. I'll see you all again soon. Bye-bye.